Welcome everybody. Welcome back to your community here, United in Strengths. Our motto is breathe, remember, and connect. Pause to breathe from time to time with everything going on, catching our breath, being more mindful throughout our days and our weeks. Also to remember that we have 24 character strengths to turn to handle stress and difficulties, but also to boost our relationships and boost our well-being. And then connect with community, connect with others. And so those are the three elements that we focus on the most here in our sessions of United in Strengths. So welcome to those of you that are new. Welcome to those of you that are regulars and have attended some 40 or 50 sessions that we've had. And welcome to those who've attended periodically. So today is one of our topic days. So our topic today is kindness. And so we've done a few different sessions where we've zeroed in on a particular character strength. We've done perspective and self-regulation and bravery and a couple others. I assume we'll eventually get to all 24 of them. But today is kindness. I think that's really, we all think it's a really appropriate topic at this time of year, and also with everything going on around the world. And with these particular sessions, there's a general approach of reviewing some of the key concepts related to that character strength and reviewing some of the research on the character strength. We always want to emphasize some research because the VIA Institute is a research organization, and that's the sort of the bedrock of this entire field of positive psychology. So reviewing the research in a user-friendly way is always of paramount importance. And then also some practical strategies, which will just be peppered along the way for this session. So to start, let's start with something that Aldous Huxley said. So Aldous Huxley was a very famous English writer, died in 1963, wrote the book Brave New World and many others. So here is this grand thinker who's done all sorts of different experiments with socially and psychologically and with himself and with others and all this brilliant writing. And he was asked, out of everything that you've done, is there any kind of nugget of wisdom or any key takeaway from all of this? What would you suggest to people? And he summarized it very simply and said, the main thing that I've learned is this: just be a little kinder. So to me, that's just very powerful, that phrase, that if that's our takeaway, even today in our session here, that our goal, wherever we are on kindness as a character strength for us personally, if it's number one for you, and it probably is for many of you, if it's number 20, excuse me, if it's number 24, if it's somewhere in the middle, just be a little kinder in life. And then apply that however you like. With yourself, being kinder to yourself, applying it in your family, to your children, to an area of your life where you think you need to apply it a little bit more. Maybe in your school work, maybe in your work, maybe with your pet, maybe with your neighbor who's the opposite political sign up to your beliefs, maybe to somebody in your volunteer community. So we'll turn Aldous Huxley's very succinct phrase there into intervention there. So if we look at this character strength of kindness, we see that it's multidimensional, just like all of the character strengths are. And kindness really makes that, I think, very clear. If you look at the VIA classification that we have on the VIA site or in any of the books, there's word in brackets next to each character strength. And that's not all the character strengths have this, but it's really an attempt to kind of lay out some of the key dimensions to the strength. What are some other areas or aspects of that particular strength? And for kindness, you'll see several things. You'll see the words generosity. You'll see niceness. You'll see altruism. You'll see caring. You'll see compassion. So you see several different, and those really give us the sense that there's many layers to kindness, many different ways to express kindness. One person might be kind by being very generous with their money. Another person might be very kind by being very generous with their time and volunteering. Somebody else might be generous or might be very kind by being very compassionate to people. Compassion meaning to really sit with and be with somebody's suffering to really feel somebody else's suffering with them. Somebody else might be a sort of a caring person, where they're often in a caretaker role and enjoying it for the most part. So there's lots of different ways we can express kindness then. And I think that's a useful reflection. I mean, certainly the VIA survey, there's only 4 questions on kindness. So we can't get at all of those different dimensions there. So it requires us to be doing this kind of thing right now of reflecting, how am I kind, you might ask yourself. Because you might have it at number 24, but perhaps you would be pretty high in one of those dimensions. So I think that's worth noting, and that's something you can build upon. You know, we try to build upon what we're good at here in this work. So that's kind of my question for you then, right off the bat, is how are you kind? Do you really resonate more with the generosity element, the compassionate element of really feeling and sitting with somebody who's suffering? Are you just kind of a general nice and friendly person? Maybe a very caring person. Maybe just, so love is about being very warm and genuine with people, being a very good listener, that sort of thing. And kindness usually tends to be more about doing thoughtful things, doing those kind acts. Now, of course, there's overlap between the two, and kindness and love are one of the 3 most common dyads or combinations that appear in people's highest strengths. The other really common ones are love of learning and curiosity, and I believe kindness and fairness. So those are all common combinations. So love and kindness will be high a lot of times for a lot of people. So again, there's going to be quite a bit of overlap, but there's that distinction. There's people with love at number 1 and kindness at 24, and the reverse. And mine is a bit like that, where love is always tied for number 1 for me, or right up there. And then kindness, I've had it as low as 23 before. So there is that distinction. And, it certainly doesn't mean that I or whoever's low in kindness doesn't express it or doesn't have that capacity to do it. Me speaking for myself, I really love doing sort of novel kind acts. So it might be that the VIA is capturing that I might not be as great at doing long, sustained acts. Like I know some of you on here are caretakers for others, and you're just exquisite at being this kind, caring person day in and day out while you're working and doing all these other things too. I don't know that I'd be that great at that, to be honest. I mean, I think my kindness expresses itself, again, in more unique situations. So I like thinking out of the box, offering, say if I'm walking down the street and I see a person who's homeless, and then I know I'm going to Starbucks, and then I say, can I get you, a coffee and, a snack or something there? And then they usually say yes, and then I come back with that. So it's a little bit more of a novel kind of kindness type of thing. And that makes me feel really good. I love doing that sort of thing. But that's very different kind of kindness than someone that's doing that ongoing, deep caring and some people are just, it's their character strength. It's just something that really energizes them in such ways. So we all have different ways of expressing these different strengths. They come out in so many different ways. This week, today, my mother just had a second major gastrointestinal surgery. And actually it was today. She actually just got out of surgery a couple hours ago and is doing fine. So even though, again, I'm not that high in kindness, but I'm going to drive up 5 hours, to support her and be with her with the transition later this week. So that would be an act of kindness in that sense as well. So we all have different ways of expressing these particular strengths. Now, if we're trying to understand a strength, we should also understand what it isn't. When we're out of that particular zone of kindness, whatever that zone is for you in being nice and friendly or being deeply caring, being a sustained, compassionate person, whatever it might be, where is that particular zone for you in different situations? And so, as you know, we tend to call this the overuse and the underuse when we move out of that particular strength zone or out of that optimal mindful strength use zone. And so too little kindness and we're appearing uncaring or disinterested, maybe not being empathic to another person. And too much kindness, we can be intruding upon somebody, putting upon our kindness on others, like assuming that other people want to receive our kindness. So it can be intrusive at times. And certainly another form of overuse, there's lots of forms of overuse for every strength. So another form of overuse for kindness could, and this is the one most caretakers will relate to, and that's the burnout. Doing too much kindness, too much caring, and we become depleted and we lose our sense of energy and that sort of thing. And so that could be the overuse of kindness in that particular sense. Now, kind of an interesting example of kindness overuse that's not the non-self-care approach, but the intrusive approach. Kind of a funny example. Just a story I like telling. One of my colleagues at VIA was and who's super high in kindness, as in off the charts, always number one kindness level. And she was at the airport, several years ago, and she saw a woman getting off the plane who was struggling. She was actually trying to manage 2 kids, was carrying 3 different bags, and just, kind of barely making it with everything as she's struggling to get off the plane. And my colleague noticed that and went up to her right away and said, excuse me, I see that you've got your hands full here. Is there any way I could help you carry your bags somewhere? Can I do something? And the woman said, no, thanks. It's okay. And then my colleague said, well, I noticed your shoe is untied. Would you mind if I tied your shoe for you? I see you got your hands full. And the woman, of course, was flabbergasted, stunned, and said, yeah, I guess it is. Okay, please. And so my colleague tied her shoe, and then the woman went on. So that's another novel use of kindness, a special kindness, one that's really caring about the other person and trying to just do what one can. If this level 8 isn't enough, then my colleague is going to offer a level 4. But it also is interesting if my colleague then went up to 20 different people in the airport and started checking their shoelaces and said, well, your shoe looks a little bit loose, sir. Can I, tighten your shoe a little bit? And your Velcro could use a little bit of work here. Then that would be obviously intrusive and almost a ridiculous example, but kind of funny to think about kindness being overplayed in that particular way. But again, more relatable to us will be the overuse of kindness in the sense of depleting ourselves, the person who's always giving to others, which is beautiful and wonderful, but not giving back to themselves. So we think of that as not giving enough self-care, maybe not attending to one's own health habits of exercise, nutrition, and sleep, practicing relaxation strategies and taking time for oneself and doing pleasurable activities for oneself amidst the caring and so on. So that would be one way to boost this strength, or another way to boost this strength is to increase our care for ourselves. Now, if we look at another imbalance of kindness, this is a little bit more we might think of this as an extreme of underuse of kindness, and that's the 7 deadly sin of greed. And what's interesting is that, obviously kindness is very powerful, but research has found that greed is more powerful than kindness. And that actually fits with so much research on how bad is stronger than good. And researchers have looked at this from every which angle and found that bad is always stronger than good in terms of these general studies. So bad health is more impactful than good health, and bad feedback is more powerful than good feedback. Negative emotions stick with us and are more powerful than positive emotions. The bad parenting is more stronger than genetics. Good parenting is not. And so they've looked at some 50 plus different examples like that. And there's been hundreds of studies on this. So this shouldn't really surprise us that yes, kindness is good and it's connected with well-being and some good things, but greed is actually more powerful. So what that really tells us, this bad is stronger than good experience, it tells us that we need strengths desperately, that we as people, as families, as cities, as societies, we need these character strengths to counterbalance the bad things that happen in life, not to replace them. The bad things will happen, and then these negative things, we can learn from them for sure, but we need to really tune in to the positives and do what we can to extenuate those and to build upon those to really make the most of them and to balance out the reality of our struggles. Now, a little bit more interesting research is that another study found, and this is kind of what I'm doing here is kind of going through some different studies, probably reflecting about 10 different studies on kindness. One study was trying to say, does someone who is kind, does that lead them to then be helping, to be like a person who's more of a helping kind of person? So these experimenters designed a study where the researcher would strategically knock a box of pencils down right when the subject was coming in for the study, and then see if the person would come and automatically help them to pick up the pencils. So they did that for person after person after person, and they were looking specifically at people who are kind, and they were looking at people who are very agreeable, which is more of a neutral personality trait that's studied, whereas kindness is more of a positive personality trait. And what they found is that the people that were agreeable, no more willing to help than any other person. But the people who are kind were always willing to help. I shouldn't say always, on average, where they were significantly more willing to help. So that kind of shows us that being kind can actually lead to the behavior of kind. Because any of us can take the VIA survey and score high in kindness. It doesn't mean that we actually are going to behave more kind and actually be more thoughtful to people. But this kind of shows that the odds are we are going to put that into action. And of course, sessions like this where we're talking about putting our traits into action just actually make it that much more likely. Another study, and this is really fascinating, that there's a cascade effect of kindness. So what that means is that one act of kindness can lead to much more acts of kindness across different networks. So in other words, if you're being kind, that reaches 3 degrees of separation from you, believe it or not. So from person to person to person to person. So if I say that another way, your kindness affects your friend's friend's friend. That's not unbelievable. Your kindness affects your friend's friend's friend. So that tells us something about the power of kindness and being good. Yeah, greed is powerful and the negative is powerful, but there is a lot of power to these character strengths as well. Now, here's another interesting study is around depletion. So depletion from kindness. Now, we've talked about how we can be kind, and then we need to replenish that with self-care. That's also been shown in different ways with helpers, that even if you're just using your kindness, that takes up a certain amount of energy for you. And we need to find ways to recuperate that particular energy. We need to replenish ourselves to prevent burnout, to prevent overwhelm as a parent, to prevent working too much, volunteering too much. We need to be able to balance out that kindness with some self-care, or we'll end up, our health will be sacrificed, or there'll be other negative impacts. Now, many of you might remember the movie Pay It Forward. So Pay It Forward is a movie from, probably 21 years ago. I think it was 1999 maybe, with Kevin Spacey and Haley Joel Osment, which is the idea that if we can do 3 acts of kindness into our life, that's going to create a ripple effect, like we were talking about, this cascade of kindness. So this has been studied in children, it's been studied in young adults, students, it's been studied in adults, and seems to be consistently finding benefits and well-being when people do that. In one study of people that were younger, around actually no, this wasn't the younger study, so this was of adults, found that not only the givers of kindness benefited. So if we're kind to other people, we get a well-being benefit, so it's good for us to be kind. But the receivers of the kindness also benefit. So they experience positive emotions and they experience good well-being benefits that way. But also those receivers in this one study 40% of them had immediately paid that kindness forward. And then the majority said that they would pay that kindness forward in this particular study. There's another study. Let me read to you what the intervention for kindness was. This was studying 400 students from the ages 9 to 11. And so these were the instructions the researchers gave. And I wanted to read this to you because it gives you a number of different examples of kindness, just to kind of get our ideas and thoughts flowing on ways that we can be kind. So here's how they instructed students for this intervention that ended up being beneficial for these students. They said, from time to time, all of us perform acts of kindness for other people. An act of kindness is when we do something nice for someone else. Sometimes our generous or nice act may be large, for example, collecting clothes for the poor. And sometimes these acts may be small, such as opening a heavy door for someone. Sometimes the person for whom we are doing it may know that it's us. We help a friend carry her books, and sometimes they don't, and we leave a treat, like a nice snack on a classmate's desk. Examples of kind acts include helping your parents cook dinner, helping your sister or brother clean their room, helping a friend with homework, visiting a grandparent, helping a parent with a younger sibling, or helping your teacher hand out materials. Although it is always good to be kind to others, sometimes we do not take the time to go above and beyond to do nice things for others. And then they went on to say, therefore, tomorrow you're to perform 3 acts of kindness, all 3 in one day. The 3 kind acts do not need to be for the same person. It doesn't matter if that person knows whether you did it or not. Also, the 3 kind acts you choose to do may be similar to the examples earlier, but they don't have to be. Do not do any kind act that may place yourself or others in danger. If you want to make a note of what acts you did in order to help you remember them, please feel free to do so. So that was the intervention used in that particular study for those younger students. So I offer that also to you. It gave some kind of nice examples, very practical ways we can think about kindness. And that would be one of our challenges. So starting tomorrow, what might be 3 acts of kindness that you could do? And sometimes there's some power in that bundling of several different activities in one. And before we move into a meditation, I want to mention a couple of other practical things. So we talked about the practical intervention of paying it forward. We talked about self-care as an important intervention. Another intervention that's been studied is the simple act of counting your kindness acts. Just for your own purposes. You don't have to publish them on Facebook or Instagram or anything, but just keeping track is a way for you to break through mindlessness about your strengths. If you just keep track, like, okay, this was kind, this was thoughtful, this was generous, and you can maybe write them down in a journal at the end of the day, you're expanding how you think about your kindness, and you're kind of broadening your mindfulness about your kindness. And researchers found that when people did that, that was a boost to their happiness when they did that particular intervention of counting their acts of kindness each day. We could, again, think of that as a way to be more mindful of our kindness. Now, another intervention would be looking to role models. We did a session on role models, back in May or June, when we spent the whole time thinking about that and interventions around mentors and exemplars and role models. And we talked about then how one of the best ways to boost character strengths is to turn to role models and to think about great examples of kindness or bravery or perseverance or curiosity in the media, in your family, in the world, and thinking about how that particular woman or man is being particularly using that strength and how they're doing it and so on. So that's a strategy that we want to keep thinking of for kindness. It can be a way that we inspire ourselves using that practical intervention. And then finally, another strategy is called altar casting. And so that's the fancy word that simply means that we label the character strength that we want ourselves to have or that we want other people to have. And so labeling is a powerful strategy. It's often used in the bravery or courage literature. If you label somebody as brave, then they're more likely to be brave, actually. It's not going to work like a magic trick. You simply say to your child, be brave, and then they will be. I've used that quite a bit with my kids, and it doesn't often work. But it's one of those things you need to just kind of embed into the conversation, give deeper examples, explanations, and helping the person understand it. But this is something that has been shown to be helpful for many different character strengths. So we would label an individual as kind or as altruistic or as very helpful, then they're more likely to do that. When in one study, people were labeled as generous, and then they were more likely to make a large contribution. People who were labeled as kind were more likely to help somebody else who had dropped several different cards. When people are labeled as good blood donors, they're more likely to give their blood to a stranger. So this kind of labeling can be particularly powerful, and again, in the courage research, but then also in the kindness research. So here we have various practical strategies that we can take with us with this work. So now let's take this into a meditation. And the point of the meditation that we often do here is really just to pause ourselves. And a lot of times at this point, and I think this is true for today too, a lot of information was just thrown at you. It's thrown at you with unabandoned. So the idea is to just pause, and we soaked in some of that information, not all of it, but likely one or two things are powerful for you. So I'd like to invite us in a moment to pause and sit with what might be most striking to us. And then I'm going to offer you a beautiful poem by Naomi Shihab Nye, who has written some 30 volumes of published poetry. Her father was Palestinian, her mother American, and just writes beautifully on a number of topics, and kindness was one of them. So I'll weave that into our meditation as well. So let's begin by, if you're comfortable with it, closing your eyes and attending to yourself right now in this moment, which means to pause our autopilot mind that's thinking, idea, reflecting, going into the demands of our day and all these other things, and just trying to let things go, coming back to this present moment. Many people find it helpful to turn to their breathing to help root them into the present moment. Because when we're feeling our in-breath and feeling our out-breath, then we are in the present moment. So you might try that, feeling your in-breath and feeling your out-breath. And I invite you to consider what struck you most in today's session so far. What is percolating there? Most meaningful for you? And just honoring that, whatever is coming up for you, that's likely important for some reason. Holding that there with your breathing. Perhaps considering an action that you might take based on what's coming up for you. Might even surprise you what comes up and surfaces for you, different than what might be typical for you. It might be a new idea, or it might be a thought, it might be an action. I want to invite you to consider the wisdom from this poem on kindness as you breathe in and out. Allowing the words of Naomi to just flow through you, impacting you in whatever way is most appropriate right now. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you've been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend.